Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today's topic is about teaching bilingual or bicultural students in multilingual or multicultural settings. Have you ever experienced traveling in a country whose language and culture differ from yours? What might be the problems and feelings you experience in such situation? Now imagine yourself an adolescent in school in this new country, language, and culture. What strategies might you have used to function successfully in that environment and learn the content of the school subjects? In the USA, one in every five children in public schools today is either an immigrant child or a child of immigrant parents. How has immigration to the United States fluctuated over time? Here is the US immigrant population and share over time from 1950 to present data tool. Since 1970, the share and number of immigrants have increased rapidly, mainly because of large-scale immigration from Latin America and Asia, with the foreign-born population standing at 44.7 million as of 2018. Which languages are most frequently spoken in U.S. homes? In 2018, approximately 78% or 240.3 million of all 307.5 million people ages 5 and older, regardless of nativity, reported speaking only English at home. The remaining 22%, which is 67.3 million, reported speaking a language other than English at home. At the national level, Spanish is the language most commonly spoken after English. Among people speaking a language other than English at home, 62% were Spanish speakers, followed by speakers of Chinese, Tagalog, and Vietnamese, Arabic, French, and Korean. In today's schools, according to Echevarria, Vogt, and Short, students who are learning English as an additional language are the fastest growing segment of the school-age population in the United States, and almost all candidates in teacher education programs will have linguistically and culturally diverse students in their classes during their teaching careers. Multilingualism is common in modern society due to different historical, social, political, and economic reasons, and it is one of the educational aims of many schools around the world. Multilingual or multicultural classrooms with bilingual or bicultural students are increasing, and what was seen as a problem is now considered an asset because, in such a world, crossing boundaries and borders can most easily be accomplished when one is fluent in two or more languages. Bilingualism is deemed personal, professional, and educational, while monolingualism is considered a disadvantage. For many students, English is not a second language, but a third or fourth. Regardless of whether students are learning English as a second, third, or even fourth language, much of what they bring to school from their primary language represents the beliefs, attitudes, behaviors, and values of their home, their primary culture, and community as well. To teach bilingual and multilingual students effectively, we need knowledge and understanding of their language, culture, and community. We need to honor and respect the knowledge represented by students' homes and communities. And we need to understand the relationships among these important influences on students' lives. The remainder of this chapter will address issues related to second language acquisition, define bilingual students and programs, and discuss appropriate instruction for bilingual or bicultural students in multilingual or multicultural settings. There are a number of generally standard terms and abbreviations used to describe or refer to non-English speaking and bilingual students. By learning these terms, we begin to get a sense of the students themselves. Bilingual, these refer to students who speak two languages, and multilingual means more than two languages. Many bilingual students have achieved full English language fluency and are biliterate in English and their other language. These students generally function as effortlessly in classroom English as do their monolingual English language peers, and do not require special assistance in learning English. A lot of Filipinos fall into this category because English has been a part of our culture since it was introduced by the British invaders in 1762. Limited English Proficient students, or LEP, are those who can demonstrate some conversational English but who have not attained minimal levels of academic and oral language English proficiency. This means they can converse quite well in English but still struggle with academic English. L1 stands for First Language. L2 is Second Language. Primary language, native language, home language, heritage language, or mother tongue also refer to L1. English as a second language, or ESL, is used to designate classes that are immersion English classes. English language learners, or ELL, is the preferred means of referring to immigrant students who are not fluent in English, and it is also called EL. Bilingual education programs provide instruction in students' primary language, focusing on content learning while providing instruction in English during part of the school day. Most bilingual classes are in elementary schools, and most of those are at the primary grade level. Some do exist at intermediate grades and in middle schools, and a few can be found in junior and high schools. Dual immersion programs provide instruction in English and another language by alternating languages by curriculum or subject areas, or time, like in the morning or afternoon. Students in immersion programs enter with either English or the other language as their first language. The goal of immersion program is for all students to exit the program fluently bilingual and biliterate. This means that students will be proficient in two languages. Transition programs are intended to bridge ESL and bilingual classes in regular classrooms. Students who have been in ESL and bilingual classes who need a bit more assistance before being completely immersed in regular classes are often put into transition classes. Transition classes are often found in middle, junior high, and senior high schools. Maintenance bilingual programs are available in some very few middle and secondary schools for the purpose of maintaining and developing students' language and literacy proficiency in their first language. Such programs are grounded in two key beliefs: that unless ELL students have opportunity to continue instruction in their first language or heritage language, they are at risk of becoming partial bilinguals and semi-literate in their first language, and that eradication of students' first language undermines cultural identity and causes loss of communication between parents who maintain the first language and their children who have lost that language. Filmer states, "What is lost is the ability for parents and children to communicate about the deep and critical experiences of growing up. What the parent has to teach the child and what the child is able to share with the parent are irretrievably lost when their means of communication are lost to them. The end result can interfere with students' social, emotional, and academic development. In most families, the heritage language is completely lost by the third generation." Thus, not only do maintenance bilingual programs validate students' primary language and culture and continue developing their first language and literacy abilities, but in so doing, these programs positively affect these students' English language literacy and overall academic achievement as well. We are now more informed about the different bilingual or multilingual students and the different programs that can help them in their language learning. But the challenge comes in identifying their levels of language proficiency. Thankfully, Lee Gunderson devised a graduated scale to define degrees of English oral proficiency that is helpful in understanding second language development, especially growth from basic interpersonal communication, or BIC, to cognitive academic language proficiency, or CALP. The levels he uses are described as follows. A student with zero level English cannot answer yes or no questions. They're unable to identify and name any objects, understands no English, often appears withdrawn and afraid. A student with very limited English responds to simple questions with mostly yes or no or one word responses, speaks to 1 to 2 word phrases, attempts no extended conversation, seldom, if ever, initiates conversation. A student who has limited English responds easily to simple questions, produces simple sentences, has difficulty elaborating when asked, uses syntax or vocabulary adequate for personal simple situations, and occasionally initiates conversation. A student with limited fluency speaks with ease, initiates conversations, may make phonological or grammatical errors, makes errors in more syntactically complex utterances, and freely and easily switches codes. Gunderson uses a decision heuristic that combines students' L1 literacy, the number of years they have experienced literacy instruction and/or literacy in their primary language, and L2 oral language proficiency, which is English, to guide decision-making about ESL student placement. This heuristic may be used to decide what kind of instruction will be most beneficial for students. Students with zero level or very limited L2 proficiency and no or very few years of reading and writing instruction in their primary language would be very unlikely to benefit from placement in regular subject area classrooms. Students with limited oral fluency and 7 or more years of L1 literacy would probably function very effectively in regular classes. Between these extremes, students would probably function better or less well in regular classrooms, depending on where the abilities fall on the heuristic. There is a concern for the degree and quality of communication between all parties involved in learning. Teachers need to establish contact with whoever is responsible for counseling, making assignments, and watching over these students' progress. Good instruction is emphasized for bilingual or bicultural students instead of being remedial in nature. Good instruction involves rich language interaction, a focus on students' prior knowledge base, careful lesson planning, integrated or collaborative learning, cultural breadth, and emphasis on student strengths, authentic assessment, multiple sources of information, and multiple response modes. These are in addition to attention to language, repetition of ideas and concepts, allowance for students to choose which language to use at any given moment, low-risk environment for second language users, and the emphasis of on-the-spot correction of language misuse. ELL students are best served by solid, well-designed instruction suitable for all students that focuses on content learning and that provides needed support for students who are in the process of developing English language and literacy skills. Of prime importance is that this instruction provides for and increases student facility with the academic language of subject areas. Two approaches for modifying instruction for ELL learners in subject matter classrooms are specially designed academic instruction in English or sheltered instruction. Certain principles of instruction put emphasis on these approaches. Active participation. Students learn both content and language through active engagement in academic tasks that are directly related to a specific content. Social interaction. Students learn both content and language by interacting with others as they carry out activities. Integrated oral and written language. Students become more able language learners when language processes are integrated into a variety of ways for a variety of purposes, real books and real tasks. Students learn to read authentic texts and to write for useful purposes. Background knowledge. Students' prior knowledge of a topic may be activated through classroom activities drawn from a variety of language sources. Effective instruction is reached when ELL students fully understand content, learn new content through the second language, develop second language proficiency, and interact cross-culturally with their peers. Sheltered instruction is viewed today as the most effective and appropriate approach for students in ESL transition and in subject area classes that house students who are not fully fluent in English and have not achieved English literacy. Sheltering involves adjusting language demands of a lesson by modifying speech and vocabulary, providing rich contrast, using models and visuals to illustrate concepts, and relating instructions to students' experiences, teaching both the content vocabulary and the words used to explain the lesson. Repeatedly using the same general lesson format, not activity, initially so that the students don't have to figure out how the teacher is presenting information from day to day. Minimizing lecture time, making lectures short and direct, and emphasizing small group collaborative learning activities. Providing charts, schematics, pictures, organizers, and other visuals to illustrate and support information and concepts developed through oral or written language. Using pictoral schematics to illustrate directions for completing tasks and activities. And incorporating tasks into lessons as appropriate that do not depend heavily on language and literacy abilities. Specifically, the elements of a sheltered lesson are as follows: bringing the lesson to life, setting the stage, pre-teaching vocabulary, guiding initial learning, guiding practice, and guiding independent practice. When teachers are able to integrate the sheltered instruction systematically in their classes, ESL students would feel welcome and eager to learn at their comfortable pace. Is your classroom or classroom instruction conducive for bilingual or bicultural students? Why don't we find out? Here are some questions to help you evaluate whether bilingual or bicultural students are effectively learning in your class. Are second language learners who are new to English given the opportunity to perform many language tasks involving real or at least realistic communication? Do they receive understandable language and multisensory input throughout the day? Do they engage in reading and writing for authentic purposes daily? Are the reading selections at the appropriate level of complexity based on the students' evolving language and literacy skills in English? Are second language learners encouraged to take risks with language? Are they integrated with native English speakers in meaningful contexts? Do they have access to challenging subject matter material and expository text delivered with a language-sensitive approach? Is their growth in language assessed in an authentic fashion? These are the questions that must be asked continually by teachers of bilingual or bicultural students. To the extent that the answers are yes, we can be assured that the ELL students are acquiring the content knowledge they need, acquiring fluency and literacy in English, and acquiring the skills necessary for academic success. Thanks for watching. I hope you've learned a lot from this video presentation. To view chapters 5 and 7, click the links in the description box below.